Hi. Let me know if you can hear me okay, and if you can see my face. Okay. This is what we're working with today. This is my canvas for the day. Um yeah. So the plan today is to talk about the difference between being an expat and a tourist, and that might sound kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Like obviously, tourists and expats are very different from one another. Um, and the simple explanation, I guess, for that is, tourists just visit and expats actually live in one place for a little while. But yeah, there's more to it than that, I think. I think there's more to it than that. What while I'm waiting for maybe somebody to come say hi to me, come say hi. Come say hi. I'm going to show you a picture of the look that I'm going to attempt today. We shall see what happens because I'm not a makeup artist. So don't come for me in the comments talking about you didn't do that right. That didn't go on the way it was supposed to. You did that all wrong. Probably. Yeah, that's probably all true. I don't actually do this for a living. I'm a college professor, and so that's that. But I like to try new things. And last week was kind of fun doing a live and putting on my makeup over on my Facebook page, Professor's Kitchen Facebook page. And so yeah, I'm gonna try it again this week. I'm going to share another new fun fact, and it's probably not all that new. I'm guessing there are probably a lot of people who already know the difference between being a tourist and being an expat, but lots of people, I think, don't quite know what it means to be an expat. It's becoming more and more popular, so that's kind of cool. I think a lot more people are trying it out and living in new places and trying new things, which is wonderful. It makes the world a little smaller, um, gets people used to other cultures and things like that. So I'm gonna try and talk about it from my perspective, I guess, if nothing else, because people sometimes seem intrigued. Maybe I'm just prattling on and they're pretending to be interested. I can never tell. I'm an introvert, so I just assume that people are like, "Yeah, that sounds cool. Okay." And that they're probably thinking, this chick is really boring. Why am I talking to her? I regret all of my life decisions. So, I mean, it could go either way. But anyway, this is the look that I'm going to attempt today. I posted this over on my Instagram and asked a bunch of people over there what they thought about me trying this out. So, this is, hold on, ooh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the look that I'm going to, not you. I mean, you might if you want to. I'm not going to stop you from trying this. But that's what I'm going for. But I'm not a makeup artist. And I'm sure that a professional makeup artist did that. So I'm going to put that there so I can kind of see it. And it looks pretty simple. It's orange. We're gonna put orange makeup on my face and see what happens. Before I get into that, and while I'm putting on base and stuff, and just as a reminder, I do not do my entire face, so this is not one of those beat in your face type videos at all because I'm too old for that, and I'm not very good at putting on my makeup in a way that doesn't leave me with these huge old lady grooves in my forehead. So you can kind of see them up here already. And so I just don't put foundation on because I'm not very good at that. I just look really, really old when I do it. So I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. Sorry. This isn't that kind of video. Anywho, before I get into the topic, and this is kind of related to what I'm going to be talking about today of tourist versus expat and whatnot. I want to start by acknowledging, of course, current events because that's sort of the point of this is sharing current events and stuff with you all. Um, the shooting in Texas, and don't don't come for me in the comments if I pronounce this incorrectly. Texas towns are really hard to pronounce, first of all. They're never they're not phonetic, and as somebody who has studied linguistics, yeah, Texas, I don't know what y'all are doing, but I'm gonna go with Uvalde, Texas. I tried very respectfully, I tried. I've tried in the past to pronounce towns in Texas, and I get laughed at. For instance, I thought that the Texas town that my family was from was called Bowie because it's spelled Bowie, Bowie. Apparently, that's pronounced Bowie, like the knife, and not Bowie, like the rock star. So, who knew? I I didn't know that. So, sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly, but I wanted to mention the shooting, and I don't I don't even know what to say about it. I don't want to share any sort of empty thoughts and prayers or anything like that because I think it's completely horrific, and thoughts and prayers don't really do a whole lot of good, frankly. And as someone who has lived, like I said, overseas off and on for the last off and on for the last 10 years or so. Um, this doesn't happen in other countries, especially not with the same frequency that it happens in the United States. It is truly a uniquely American issue. And that's disturbing, like so disturbing. And it's one of the reasons why I have no desire whatsoever to live in the United States. Like, I just don't. I don't. I know it's super hard for friends and family to accept the fact that I'm so far away most of the time, but I kind of like being alive, and I have children to think about and trying to keep them alive. So I'm responsible for other people and their lives. And I know that probably sounds kind of elitist or somewhat inappropriate to be like, well, I'm going to get my kids and get the heck up out of here. But I think that I would like to acknowledge that I think we have a privilege in being a military family and being able to say that we're going to go and live overseas for a little while, and being able to work and live overseas at the same time is a truly unique experience, and it's one that I don't ever take for granted. I really truly don't. I hope it doesn't come across as flippant that I prefer to live overseas and that I'm willing to just be like, yeah, friends and family, stay behind. If you think this is cool, then feel free to like just stay in the States. But I have to do what's best for my family, my like immediate family, my children. And so my husband and I are on the same page when it comes to stuff like this. And that's the most important thing right now. And I think my family is kind of coming around a little bit, and they're starting to accept that it is kind of the kids are better off with, I mean, obviously with their parents, but also living overseas. So they're softening a little to the idea that I'm not around all the time, which they got used to me being around quite a bit before I got married. And now I'm never around. So they're softening. And if that is one of your hangups as well, if you're thinking that I can never live overseas because my family's here and my friends are here, and I would just be too far away from them and they would make me feel guilty about being so far away, that is true. They will definitely make you feel really guilty about living far away from them. But that could be living on the other side of the country. It could be living outside of the country. It could just be living in like the next town over. I don't think there's any sort of limitation, like geographic limitation to that guilt that people try to put on you when you move away. Like if you don't live in the same town that you grew up in, people will try to make you feel bad about that, and I don't know what to say. It's just like, "Okay, well, that's you. You do you, boo." But I would prefer to live overseas, and so, yeah, I've spent the last 10 years or so, back and forth between overseas and the States, and part of that reason, or the reason why we've chosen, to take those opportunities when they're given is because of everything that happens here, and especially, um, since both of us, my husband and I both went to private schools, um, him more so than I did because he went, like, even younger. He started even younger. But, we just don't want that. We want them to be able to experience a public school life, and I think it's fine. I went to public school, kindergarten through 8th grade, and I thought it was fine. It wasn't I turned out okay. Ish. I'm alright, ish. So, I think public school education is perfectly fine, and I kind of want that for my kids. I would kind of prefer that for them. So, that is what's going on there. So yeah, I feel bad about what happened. Obviously, if anybody, and I've heard this said many times before, anybody with a heart should feel something about what happened in Texas. But so I do. I definitely do. I have a heart, and I'm definitely very sad for them and sad for the country that this keeps happening. Um, but also, you really have more options. I want people to understand that you really do have more options than you think you do when it comes to that decision to live in the United States and to stay in the United States. It can be, and it is very, very scary to think about not having that safety net, not having that support system, and moving super far away. But there are options. There are other options out there, for everyone, and I think if you're serious about it, you should definitely consider those options. Um, Now more than ever, there's been Blaxit. I don't know if anyone has heard that term before, but Black people moving abroad and becoming expats, and that group is getting younger and younger. There are more and more very young expats that are, single, unattached, no kids, that kind of thing. And so they have the freedom to just pack up and move. There are Black communities popping up in parts of Mexico and Panama, many different places around the world. And part of the reason, again, is just because they are well educated, or they have created some sort of career that they can take abroad. Many of them are digital nomads, which is amazing and was not even an option, of course, when I first started school, but it's definitely an option now. And many people are choosing that. They're choosing this digital nomad life so that they can come and go as they please and travel the world and see the world and experience other cultures and feel safe. Like, so many, especially Black people, just do not feel safe in the United States. They feel so much safer in other places. And if you find that one place that you really like and enjoy, why not stay? Like, why not stay there and live there for a little while? And I think, my husband and I talk about where we feel most comfortable and where we think we would like to eventually settle down. And I always say that I still don't feel like I've lived in enough places yet to say that I really want to settle down in one place or another. But I do think that I'm getting to the point where I can say that I really like this one place, and so maybe we as a family should settle down here, or perhaps once the children are out of the house, we should settle down in one place or another. But all of those places are overseas. None of them are in the United States at all. We like I said, we're slowly but surely traveling the world, narrowing it down, and yeah, none of the places that I've even considered settling down are in the US. None of them. Not a one. Not a single one. I love the idea of a community. I love the idea of living in a community where people are friendly and like-minded in a way. I'm gonna try this. So this is the Totally Tubular palette. I got this a while ago from a Tribe Beauty box, and it has some super fun colors in there. I don't know if you can see all these fun colors and stuff in here. Um, I'm gonna try Chameleon first of all, and see what that looks like on, because I have no idea. We're gonna try and see what happens. But anyway, this is probably not the right brush for this either. Um, I don't know what is the right brush, y'all. Tell me. Tell me what the right brush is for this. I have no idea. We're just winging it. We're gonna wing it. We're winging it. But anyway, all of the places that we've talked about potentially settling down one of these days, I do think have like-minded people in them, in that they also want to be there. Like, they want to be there. They want to, first of all, give the impression that they're not just living there to use up any sort of valuable resources or anything like that. Like, they're contributing to the economy. Um, Most of the time, when it comes to expats in general, including people who are from other countries that move to the United States, you have to have some sort of a skill. You can't just like pack up and move without having some sort of marketable trade or skill or something like that, where you can contribute to their economy and you can prove that you're going to contribute to the economy and not be part of the problem. Like, you're not going to get there and have to use up their resources and stuff, their, medical, healthcare resources and other things. Um, and then you're not a criminal, which is a big thing in the US too. You can't just like decide that you want to move to the US and be a criminal and then get in a whole bunch of trouble and be part of the problem here. So the same is true in other countries. You kind of have to be able to do something, but and maybe even have some kind of a savings that you can prove, um, that you can support yourself while you get started in another country if you don't already have a job. So there are lots of rules and restrictions and things like that. But again, right now, I think it's much more likely that you will be able to get a visa or whatever to live in another country if you have a little bit of savings and at least some sort of an occupation that will travel with you. And many people do. And there are jobs that, again, were not even fathomable back when I was in school, that are serious jobs and stuff now. And people are doing these things all over the place, and it's cool. So the whole idea of tourism, of course, can be sort of a negative thing in many places, because again, you get people who move to these countries and they maybe just are there to kind of mess things up. They don't want to learn the language. They just want to come and like hang out and yell English phrases at people really loudly, thinking that maybe if I say it louder, they will understand me, even though these people obviously speak a different language. Don't be that tourist, okay? Please do not be that tourist. It's so annoying, and it makes it harder for everyone else to go to these places and be accepted and welcomed. Um, Places that I've been, that I've felt kind of uncomfortable, um, would be like France, for instance. I went to France and there are certain parts of France that are just so anti-tourism, because it's just kinda taken over and people are so aggressive about it that yeah. They, like, barely want tourists there anymore because people get so loud and aggressive, and it's no wonder that they don't want people there because if you're gonna be rude and obnoxious, then obviously who's gonna want you? You don't want somebody in your house that's rude and obnoxious, you would kick them out, right? So and you might even not answer the door the next time they come over. So you have to think about that, like, you're in someone else's house, and when you're a tourist, you need to kind of be respectful, respect the rules, try to learn a little bit of the language. I can't even tell you how confusing it gets sometimes when we travel to different places and I've learned the bare minimum of like hello and thank you and where's the bathroom and stuff. And it just bounces around in my head sometimes that I remember going to Spain one time and using Korean to answer questions in the backseat of a taxi, and I was like, "Oh my god, what am I doing?" Like, I've spoken Spanish much longer than I've spoken Korean, and I did not speak Korean. Would not trust myself. I would not I would not take a test in Korean or anything like that these days, for sure. But I learned enough to be able to get around. I did, and because I guess that was the last language that I remember, like, last foreign language that I had used, my brain just defaulted to Korean. It was the most ridiculous thing ever. I'm like, "Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?" I sound so stupid, and this poor cab driver has no idea what I'm saying. So, that happens. It does happen, but it's worth it because, again, you go to these places, and if you can at least try to speak the language, that goes a long way into just making you not look like an idiot, for one, and two, making you look a little more respectful because why not? Why not be just a tiny bit respectful of someone else's culture, someone else's language? Just why not? I just don't see why that's a bad thing. Just try it. Try it. It's kind of fun. I think it's fun. I love learning new languages and speaking new languages, and I'm very uncomfortable, of course, speaking any sort of language, but we lived in South Korea for a couple of years, and while we were there, I felt like it was kind of important to learn the language. So there was this book called 90-Minute Korean that a friend gave me before we moved, and I used it to learn the Korean language system on the flight on my way to South Korea. And when I say that, sometimes people are like, "Oh my god, like that sounds so hard." Yeah, Korean's a phonetic language. So I almost feel like it's cheating because it's actually a little bit easier than it sounds, but it's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible. And I enjoyed it. And after years of living there and reading Korean, writing in Korean, because you kind of have to at least be able to read a little bit of Korean to get around in, say, the airport or the buses and trains and stuff like that. It's helpful. There are places where there's English and sometimes like English, Japanese, and Korean all written at the same, like on the same sign, but not always. So it is easier to just go ahead and learn some Korean, at least be able to read a street sign or something so you know where the heck you are, or, read the signs in the on the subway so you know where to get off the train. Like, that's kind of important. But I did take it one step further and I sat down a few times a week, if possible, with a Korean tutor. And we basically because I work for a language academy there, we exchanged languages basically. So I would teach her some English and she would teach me some Korean. And we just did that whenever we both had time to do it. And it was awesome. It was really great. I really felt like I learned quite a bit. I got a little more confident in my ability to speak. Um, so shout out to Kang Myung because yeah, she was one of the best teachers ever. Absolutely, hands down, one of the best. And I adored her, and she was very sweet and patient with me, even though because I was not very good at it. But again, I had to travel around. Sometimes when I hopped in the back of a taxi, I would immediately default to Korean just to be respectful. Most of the Koreans that I came across spoke English, but just to be respectful, I started off in Korean and I would hop in the back of a taxi. And if I didn't have the location of where I was going written in Korean on like a little note or notepad or something like that, then I would usually have it memorized, like the pronunciation memorized so that I could say it. Sometimes I would do both just to be on the safe side. And other times I would just I don't know. They were just really sweet people, and they were typically really, really patient with me, and so if I hopped in a taxi and I had to, like, dig out my notebook or my little notepad or something like that to show them the address, I would get in and I would say, "잠깐만요," like, "Wait a minute, please," and then, they were usually, like, kinda caught off guard by that, and then they would say something like, "Oh, your Korean is very good," and I'm like, "No, it's not, but thank you." And then we'd go on from there, and they would usually, again, like, speak perfect English after that, and they were just appreciative that I even put forth the effort to say it. And it was so helpful, like, when I cannot begin to tell you how helpful it was just to have the basics down. Um, in Korea, like, the train stations, are usually where you will stop if you, like, tell a taxi driver that you need to go to Seoul Station. So you would get in the taxi and you would say, "Seoul역 주세요," which is, like, "Seoul Station, please." And we, at the time, lived near Noksapyeong Station, which was just out is, like, in Itaewon in Seoul, and so I would say, "Noksapyeong역 주세요," and then they would know to park somewhere near the station, and then from there, it's a 이거." You go this, here, or this. It's not that bad, basically. It's really not that bad, and it's totally worth it because it just shows that you're not an obnoxious tourist, and you transition from being that in their eyes to being a true expat and being welcomed. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's really nothing wrong with that. Again, I was sort of a unique situation in Korea because we were there for my husband's job, but I also ended up getting a job and working while we were there, and that's pretty unusual for a military spouse, to be very honest. We're not usually allowed to work in a lot of places, and the jobs that are available are very difficult to get because there's so few of them. Um, so the fact that I was even able to work was huge, like absolutely huge. And again, I did not take that lightly at all. Um, I loved working. I couldn't see myself not working. So I did everything that I could think of to try to get a job, and I got one, and I loved it. I loved working. Um, I loved my students. I loved teaching, and that was just the thing that I really wanted to do. So I made it happen. That's not the case though. Again, for every military spouse. But I did what I could to make it happen, and it just happened to work out well for me. So I had to be able to, again, kind of speak the language just a little bit in order to be able to work and to get around. Um, And um, typically, what happens with military spouses is that you are there under your husband's or your spouse's orders. So you have to have a certain visa in your passport to be able to come and go, like in and out of the country. And if you get stopped and you don't have that stamp in your passport, which typically only happens like at the airport. I mean, they look for it at the airport and that's about it. It's not like you have to walk around with your passport or anything like that and you get like stopped by police and have to show some ID. But if you get caught without the stamp, you do get in trouble. You could potentially get fined or deported and stuff like that. So it is pretty important to have it. But because I was a teacher, I had a different visa. And I had a teaching visa instead of the typical SOFA visa, which is status of forces abroad. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And it's the visa that you get in your passport. It's just like a stamp or sticker in your passport that says like, "Hey, this person is here because the military says that they are supposed to be here, that they're allowed to be here." And if, and you just have to have that. So I didn't. I didn't have it though because I was teaching. And so I had my teaching visa instead. And it didn't really make a whole lot of difference, honestly. Nothing ever really came up about the whole thing ever, but it was there. It was in my passport, and it was kind of cool because it also allowed me to have Korean benefits, which are amazing. I mean, my very first doctor's appointment in Korea, um, like was my introduction basically to the Korean health system was having to go and get my medical check before I started working. And with that, I got a chest x-ray and an eye exam and blood work done. And they basically just check you out to make sure that you don't have any sort of communicable diseases and stuff like that before they hire you to work. So you can't like have um like tuberculosis or something like that, or so they have to do a chest x-ray and make sure you don't have anything like that that you could pass on to someone in the country and then just leave and everyone gets sick. you know Pandemic prevention, because that's important. And other people in other countries think about stuff like that, especially if they've had epidemics or pandemics before. They know that they have to be careful. So they do. They are super careful with stuff like that. But I had probably 3 or 4 things done that day at the hospital. And something like that in the United States, of course, would cost thousands of dollars. I mean, my insurance probably would have been billed an absolutely ridiculous amount of money, but there, $100, like the US equivalent of about $100 for all of the stuff that I had done that day. Could not believe it. It was insane. And I walked out of there just amazed at how easy it was. I had an interpreter basically that walked around with me the whole time. Anytime I had to go to a Korean hospital, I had an interpreter or translator that walked around with me and um, basically held my hand and explained paperwork and told me, if all the doctors spoke English, but just in case there was maybe a nurse or someone else that didn't speak English, they could translate. And they waited for me when I had to go in without them for something, if I had to go to the bathroom or, you know, pee tests and whatnot. That happens. Um, then, they sit out and wait for me and take me to the next place that I needed to go. It was so easy, so, so easy to get around and just do all the stuff that I needed to do. It was wonderful. Wonderful. And that was my introduction. That was my introduction to the Korean health system, was just being treated really well and being treated like a human being. And a little of that goes a long way. US, I'm looking at you. Why don't you try it? Treat people like human beings instead of like numbers and stuff. Um, but all of that to say that it's important to treat people like people. And you do gain, I think, a lot of perspective when you are a tourist for sure. But then also when you make that transition from being a tourist to being an expat, you definitely start to see all of the cracks in the American system and in other systems as well. I feel like at this point I've kind of collected different ideas from different countries as we've traveled around. Um, Different things work differently in different places, and they some things work well, some things don't work well. I remember living in Germany and thinking that their healthcare system wasn't all that great, to be honest. I don't know if it was just our area or the hospital that I went to or what, but I wasn't really all that thrilled with how I was treated at the emergency room. And it wasn't that I was not treated well, it was just that they were really slow. And I was like, if this is what public medicine is like here, they need to take some notes from the Koreans or like from somebody else because this is not cool. This ain't getting it, y'all. This is not okay. Uh, I do not want to sit here for hours and hours and phew, no thanks. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. And I sat there for hours with like an IV started in my arm and I was just walking around with this tube hanging out of me. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But I digress. Um we start to notice the holes and the cracks and the problems in different countries and their different systems, but um that's okay too. Like there's just so much perspective in different places, and it's pretty incredible to be very honest. Now, this is not an endorsement for everyone to just run out right now and join the military and start living this life. But to at least start exploring your options. This is gonna get really messy. Oh at least start exploring your options. That there are other options available. If you're not happy with what's going on where you are, you absolutely can leave. You can leave. You can leave all this behind. I wish I had known years ago that it was a serious possibility, because I let somebody talk me out of it many years ago. Um, Someone that I trusted at the time, um, said to me, "You know what? You don't have a very good support system. If something happens to you while you're working abroad, this they wouldn't be able to pay to get you back into this country. And then what are you going to do? Like, you're just going to be stuck." And that's somewhat true. I mean, that could happen to anybody for sure. And it was definitely true at the time that, my family didn't necessarily have the means, and would not necessarily have had the means to get me back into the United States if something happened. But also, Asia has they have pretty good healthcare systems. They have things in place to help people. And it's not like I would have been moving to a third world country where I wasn't able to get medical care and stuff. That wasn't the case then, and it isn't the case now. So it is somewhat of a concern, but not really. It's really not that bad. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of kicking myself. I kicked myself years ago, for letting someone talk me out of it because it probably would have been pretty amazing back then, to be very honest. To be a single person abroad for sure. We went a whole year without kids, um, before we had our first child. And it was so much fun just hanging out with my husband and going around different places and stuff. And it's not that I regret, I guess, having children or whatever, but it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun together. And I can only imagine what it must be like for a single person to do something similar because it was just so much fun. All right, I'm gonna try to darken this up a little bit because her orange is very orange and mine is not. How do I look so far? Tea. We're gonna see if this works a little bit. Anyway, if you are an expat and you want to chat on the Professor's Kitchen, the Office Hours podcast, then let me know because I would love to talk to more expats about their experiences and share. I think we all have really interesting stories about how we started and where we ended up. Many of us, didn't, weren't even trained in what we started doing abroad. I mean, I've always not always, I didn't always think that I was gonna be an English teacher, but I thought that, I would eventually study abroad or work abroad, at some point. That was always a goal of mine, and to get the opportunity to work and live abroad was exactly what I wanted. It was exactly what I'd always wanted, and I was super happy about it. I loved it. Absolutely loved every second of it, except for maybe monsoon season. That's not so fun. Um, and like there was an earthquake when we visited Japan. It just a baby one, just a little earthquake. It was a little. I don't even know if it registered anywhere. It registered in here, in the inside of me. I was like, "Ooh, that moved. The earth moved." Um, and not in like a good way. But yeah, the earth moved. So that was fun. That was really fun. But I'm glad that I had the opportunity again to even travel to Japan. I took as many trips as I possibly could because that was exciting. It was pretty darn fun to be able to do that. Okay. So, I'm going to pause for a second because I think I kind of got this look ish. It looks a little glossier than what I have going on. Let me try something and see if this works. This could also be a total disaster. But we're going to try this highlighter on my eyes. Oh, ew. This is gross. Ooh, ooh, oh my god. Okay. All right, we're gonna try this and see what happens. It's gooey. God, oh my god, it's cold and gooey. Those are two things that just don't really seem to go together. Oh, that worked out. Can you see that? Okay. Anyway, those are sort of the biggest differences I would say between being a tourist and being an expat. But I think again that one thing can kind of roll into the other, and it can be a really seamless transition. But I do recommend trying to go to as many places as you possibly can, before you decide, before you settle on one place or another. At least that's what I've found. Um, but you can also kind of just sample things a few years at a time. There are tons of people on social media now that are doing exactly that. Again, a lot of them are young people, but some of them are entire families. More families are outschooling now or unschooling, and I've shared on this channel before that the I follow like the mom trotter, and she's linked in here somewhere, and other families that travel together, and they're really making the most of their lives and enjoying being together and enjoying their time together and really having a lot of fun and exploring the world. It's really interesting. I'm totally living vicariously through many of them, until we get that opportunity one day to do it ourselves, which I think would just be so, so awesome. I guess I should probably try to darken this up and make it look something like my skin color. Meh, I don't know. Thoughts and prayers. Too soon. Okay. Anyway, all right. Oh no. Maybe that worked. I don't know. All right. I'm going to finish up the bottom of this and then yeah, we'll see what happens. So, I don't know if you can see, like, at the bottom here, she has, like, some orange underneath. Where's my finger? There we go. There's some orange underneath there, so I'm gonna attempt that, and then I think that'll be it, because this is as good as it gets, y'all. As good as it gets, y'all. So I would love to hear your thoughts, though, on what you think is the best solution to sort of the problems that are going on in the US. Do you plan to just live here forever? And I shouldn't say just, like, I'm not judging anyone if you want to stay and fight, um, or if you like things the way that they are and you don't really want them to change. I can't imagine that that's true for at least, 90 some odd percent of Americans who want better gun control laws and stuff in the United States. And honestly, I'm saying this now. I wasn't really planning on talking too much about that today. But, shit happens. And it happened this week. And if we don't talk about it, people will just kind of forget. I'm old enough, and I read this recently too. I'm old enough to remember Columbine. Um, I want to say kind of as it happened. That's probably not the best way to describe it, but I was in high school when when Columbine happened, and I think I was maybe like a sophomore in high school. Don't judge me. Don't. I just just told you how old I am, basically. But I was in high school. I was like a sophomore in high school when it happened, and I do remember being frightened initially, and definitely in the very near aftermath of it, there were so many copycats. Um, and school students everywhere were kind of freaked out by the possibility that it could happen in their own schools. And that was back in 1999, y'all. Like, that was a long time ago. And we're still having to deal with this. I don't think any of us thought back then that it was going to be as big of an issue as it is. Because when you think about it, and again, this is something my husband and I kind of talked about the other day, when this all went down, it's like, when this happened, I don't think that anyone thought that it was going to be an ongoing problem. A lot of us probably thought that it was an isolated-ish incident, and even with the copycats, those things were getting shut down pretty quickly after they happened. Not a whole lot of people were um, able to do anything immediately following that shooting. Um, but it wasn't completely unheard of either to have an incident similar to that, or people calling in death threats or bomb threats and stuff like that to their schools just to get out of school for the day. Like, that happened. That happened on occasion. I won't say quite a bit, but it happened on occasion. It happened at our school. I remember pulling up into the parking lot one day, and half of the school was, like, standing out front. It was first thing in the morning, so I'm like, "What is going on? Why are all these people standing out front?" And as we pulled up, people were like, "Oh, somebody called in a threat to the school, so they evacuated the school." First thing in the morning. I mean, we're talking, like, school started at maybe 7:45 or something like that in the morning. Like, who got up that early and decided, like, who peed in your cornflakes or whatever? You decided, "Oh, I'm gonna call in this death threat to the school so I don't have to, what, take a math test that day?" Oh, give me a break. Seriously? That's just the most ridiculous thing ever. I just thought we all just thought it was so, so dumb, and we could not foresee that this would be an ongoing issue. And then, a few years later, after we graduated, then 9/11 happened, and everyone was like, I mean, what? What just happened? Why are we going through this? Why is this a thing? And not that those two things are necessarily connected, but my husband brought up the point that the sort of difference between those two events was that one of them was a financial center that got hit. And so the reaction was like, here, way up here. And then students and teachers, the reaction was like down here. And we're like, seriously? They hit a financial center and y'all are like, everybody take off your shoes at the airport. And the reaction for school shooters was like, maybe we'll put some metal detectors in, but only in the schools that it can afford to put metal detectors in, not necessarily in the schools that can't afford to put metal detectors in, even though those schools are probably having some issues too. And those kids' lives matter just as much as the other kids' lives matter. But I mean, taxes. Just it's so frustrating, so infuriating on so many levels. But he was right, of course, that's the biggest difference, I think, is that I misplaced my oh no, here it is. I have stuff in so many places right now. Okay. Um, but that I do think is a big difference between the two was that one was school children and the other was a financial center. And yeah, apparently we care more about money than we do about children's lives. But that is definitely not the case in other countries. Anytime some sort of major tragedy happens, like it did when we were in Korea, we did live through, I suppose, a major tragedy there as well. There was a ferry that capsized. That's the thing that sticks out in my mind. So it wasn't necessarily like a terrorist attack or anything terribly intentional. But when something happened with children, I mean, politicians start falling on their swords. They start retiring or stepping down, resigning from their roles. They feel like they've failed, and they are so ashamed, and the guilt often just kills them. It's like too much for them to handle, and they resign, they step down, they leave it for somebody else who's gonna actually do a damn thing about the problem. And I think that's a better way. Not that they should off themselves. I don't ever think that that's a solution to anyone's problem. But at the very least, resign. If you're ineffective, just resign. Move along. Let somebody who's going to do something about the problem do something about the problem. But again, when you haven't lived in another country and you aren't paying attention to international politics, like we don't here in the United States, we don't see those things happen. And so we're not paying any attention to the fact that there's more than one way to do this. Then there's more than one way to live, more than one way to exist, more than one way to protect our children and our laws and our lives and everything. Like there are other options out there. And we're so consumed, I think, with other countries looking to us for guidance that we don't often look to other countries for guidance and to see what they're doing that might actually be better than what we're doing. And when we get questioned about it, like that video I saw recently of Ted Cruz getting interviewed by a British journalist, um, where he was like, well, people want to come here. People want to come to the United States because we have freedom and we have this and we have that. It's like, yeah, okay. Keep pushing that narrative because the people who live here, many of us are trying to leave. I'm just saying, I would like to leave. And if it had it my way, I would leave and not come back. And I'm personally, I won't say that I'm trying to trying to make that happen, but at some point I do think that we will probably just leave and not come back because it's gotten to that point. It's not cool. It's just not cool, y'all. It's not at all okay to live like this, and we need to stop thinking that it's okay to live like this and just accepting that that it is okay because it's not okay. It's just not, y'all. So, anywho, this I think is the finished look. Um, I don't have like the best light. Let me see if I can turn on. Ooh, that didn't really help. Okay, well, here's the finished look. I hope you learned something today. I hope it wasn't just rambling about tourists and expats. I do just really want to encourage everyone to take any opportunity that you get to travel abroad, to experience things abroad. Just don't be that bad tourist that gets over there and just acts a fool and makes it bad for the next tourist behind you or the next expat behind you to come in and have those same experiences. Really treasure those that time there. Soak up as much as you can of the culture and the language, and immerse yourself. Immerse yourself for as long as you possibly can, and then if you love it, find a place that you love and say, make that your mission to try and live in that place for a little while and learn even more. I can't stress it enough. I really think that it's worth it. I think that it offers so many people so much perspective. All of the people that I've met and I've come into contact with over the years who have had these experiences just absolutely love. They've absolutely loved many, many moments. We won't say all the moments, their entire time there, but they've loved living abroad. They've loved getting that opportunity to experience things in other countries and taking that back with them and having a little bit more of a critical eye on things in the United States. And we need more of that. We need to expose our children to that, I think, and let them see too. Take your kids abroad, take them and try to do as much as you possibly can with them. And if you can't travel, there are other ways to see the world. You know, if nothing else, COVID had some really positive outcomes. There were a lot of programs that are available online, videos that the kids can watch about other countries. They can learn foreign languages. Much of it is just free, and you just have to look it up, like on YouTube or other places, and expose your children to all those things too, because they're going to be the next generation that hopefully will fix all this stuff. That's a lot of pressure to put on them. So we should definitely be doing as much as we can right now to not just hand them a big pile of steaming crap and say like, fix it, fix it. Um, like I feel like some other generations might have done with us. Not gonna say which ones. Boomers. Okay. Anywho, hope you enjoyed today's Fun Fact Friday. I should probably start calling this Fail Friday or something like that, because yeah, I don't know that my makeup actually looks anything like the picture. I think I did okay. Let me know in the comments if you think that I did okay with this. So this is side by side. What do you think? Did I do it? Okay, I don't know. Let me know. And leave me a comment if you have a specific topic that you'd like me to chat about next week. I will attempt to do that. And if not, then I will just see you next week, maybe, and I'll come up with my own idea for a fun fact or a makeup fail. Either way, ciao for now.